Real excited here to bring you a customer panel. We're calling this a customer panel, not a webinar, because there are so many of us on the call here. We've got, we'll introduce everybody in a second, but we're here from Struction Site, SmartVid.io, Barton Malow, and Hawaiian Dredging. We're here to talk about how the technology, all of our technologies have been implemented across multiple projects, and how bringing together 360 photos, reality capture, and AI can unlock new value in construction. Really excited to do this. And so here's your agenda for today. We're gonna, you'll hear from SmartVid and Struction Site to start. Real quick though, just a few slides from each of us to set the stage, and then we're gonna go right into the customer experiences, Hawaiian Dredging and Barton Malow projects, the actual output of the system. So you can see an example on the right there from the Mauna Loa hotel project with some of the AI working in the 360 imagery gathered through Struction Site. So if you like seeing real stuff, this is the webinar, or oops, I'm not supposed to say webinar. This is the customer panel discussion for you, because we've got a lot of real results, and you'll hear from our panelists about what it's like to implement both of these technologies, both Struction Site and SmartVid.io, in the field. So we finish up though with questions from you out there in the audience. Please submit questions in chat. So you'll have the little GoToWebinar panel that appears. You have a button there. You can ask questions. If they're quick and easy questions, we will handle them right away. We'll try and get right back to you in the webinar. If they are a little bit broader or feel like they should be discussed amongst all the panelists, the participants here, we'll surface them at the end and we will talk them through. And if we don't get to your question, do not worry, we will reply via email. So ask as many questions as you want, fire away, we'll get back to you. If not during this webinar, then afterwards. So without further ado, let's introduce all the folks who are going to be talking here. Let me just start with myself, because I've been talking for a while now. I'm Josh Canner. I'm founder and CEO of SmartVid.io. For some reason, I drew the short straw here among the four of us, and I get to be the moderator. So, but I'll try and do a good job and not tell too many bad jokes. We've got, and keep things moving along. Let me just check and do a roll call here. We have Chris Bays from Hawaiian Dredging. Chris, you out there?
Yes.
Great.
Good morning.
Great to have you. Good morning in Hawaii. Our next location, Ted Jennings. Are you out there?
Yep. Excited.
Awesome. Great to have you. So we have Hawaii. Where are you today, Ted?
I'm in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, we got Hawaii, Detroit. Matt Daly, are you out there?
Josh, good morning from California.
Good morning. All right, we're in 4 different time zones here. So the level of difficulty is high. Really excited to have this opportunity to have a conversation about real results and implementation in the field. And given this is live and there's all 4 of us, you know, I just want to say for the audience, this is you know, high level of difficulty webinar here, and hopefully you'll bear with us as we go through it. But we're definitely going overboard on content and want to you know, get through as much of this as we can. So I'm going to set the stage, and then as I said in the agenda, we'll go through each of the specific examples, starting with Hawaiian Dredging and then going into Barton Malow. So Struction Site and SmartVid, we have partnered together to make the most of the visual data that's being gathered as you're going through the process of building. And we'll go into more detail in a second, but the basic concept here is we want to, if you're going to be doing progress walks, if you're doing milestone documentation, if you're going to be gathering visual data for any purpose in construction, you should maximize its value. So as a result of working together, we're seeing our customers capture better images faster and then use AI on top of it to unlock value, to measure what's actually going on in the imagery itself. And then one last point here is that the integration we're going to talk about today is actually, you can think of it as hands-free or automatic. So once it's set up, the data just flows from what's being gathered in instruction site in the field into SmartVid, into analytics, into automated reporting that you get. Matt, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main message for me, and the main thing that I'm most excited about is this concept of, getting double the value for the work that you're doing already to capture the job site and to digitize things. So doing one thing and getting many and a lot of different value out of it is, I think, a pretty exciting concept, and that's a big part of the reason we're here today.
Yeah, in one of our practice sessions, Matt and I were joking around that the marketing motto could be "Do one thing, get two things,"
Yeah.
which is it's kind of a simple way to put it. But yeah, you do one thing, you get two things. So let's talk about that. What that one thing is, Matt. You want to take us through Struction Site and how it works?
Yep, happy to do that, and just do a quick run through for folks that maybe are not as familiar with Struction Site, and then I'll let you take it from there.
That's great.
So Struction Site is how builders begin to automate their site documentation process and really locate the photos in their correct position on the drawing. So for most builders today, site documentation means snapping a bunch of photos on their phone, which of course have no reference to a location on a drawing, and then storing them in a folder where they will inevitably go to die. But when an electrical box gets buried behind the drywall, or you've got a core drill into a concrete slab, and you'd like to know where the rebar is located or where that J box is, a folder full of photos probably isn't going to save you the cost of rework or the schedule delays. So we solved this problem by giving builders three main capture workflows. So just standard flat photos that are from your mobile device, but they've got a position and a direction, so you actually know which wall you're looking at. Static 360 photos, which allow you to basically, if you're looking for the highest quality image and you don't mind the extra time that it's going to take to locate yourself on the drawing for each shot, that's a workflow we support. And then finally, sort of the latest addition will be what we call video walk, where the user simply needs to specify starting and ending location on a drawing, and then we record 360 video. So the main benefits that our customers are getting, and the first and is most obvious, is just complete visibility in 360. So being able to see everything in a single shot, walls, ceilings, and the reason that SmartVid's AI is able to detect quite a bit is because you're really getting so much more information, and it's a pretty obvious benefit for any 360 solution. But I think it really pairs nicely with what SmartVid is doing. Production tracking. So without any real automation, we're still hearing from customers that they're getting a ton of value from having this digital twin of their job site that they can access from anywhere. Warranty and claims, and I think Chris is going to talk about this a little bit in his section. But really, great documentation is basically guaranteed to save you money on warranty and claim issues that arise both during construction and after the project is actually closed out. And then just the owner deliverable. And for the builders that are on this call today, I want to urge you to consider that you might be missing an opportunity to create a lot of value for your client by delivering a tool like Struction Site to them at the end of the project after it's closed out, and using something like X-ray mode to be able to see through walls and slabs well after the project has been closed and it's in operations. I'm going to jump to the next slide here. Cool.
Got it.
So the video on the left is going to show you what a raw input might look like for a 360 video walk, and then it'll actually transition to show what the resulting path would look like on a drawing and how you can jump into that path and navigate around. The last thing that you're actually going to see in that video is a Procore integration, where your user can create an RFI or an observation directly within a 360 photo, which is an integration that we're also really excited to be bringing to the BIM 360 platform as well. And as I mentioned earlier, our discussion with Chris and Ted today, in my eyes, is really just about integration. It's about getting double the value for the effort that you put in to do your site documentation. And instead of letting pictures go in a folder to die somewhere, it's getting a time machine for your job site from Struction Site, and an incredibly powerful risk and safety tool from SmartVid. So I'll just wrap this up by saying we at Struction Site are really excited to be partnered with SmartVid, a company that shares our vision for the open sharing of data to build a better construction industry. And of course, we're also really excited to have shared customers like Chris from Hawaiian Dredging and Ted from Barton Malow, who are going to share their experiences with you guys here today. So I'm going to pass it back over to you, Josh.
Appreciate it, Matt. Yeah, and we share the same enthusiasm. The industry has evolved a lot, as we both know, over the last 10, 15 years. And the fact now that we can be sharing data like this and creating a solution that works in such a seamless way for our customers is it's really an exciting, sign of the times here,
For sure.
of where everything has evolved. So I'm now going to just take a few slides to talk about SmartVid, introduce us, and then we'll get into the details of the implementations here. So our mission is to reduce risk in the AEC industry by applying artificial intelligence to address areas of safety, quality, and productivity. So those three key areas of project delivery risk. We focus a lot on safety. There's a ton to chew on there in terms of what you can see in your construction imagery and how that can be used as leading indicators of construction risk. And that's really what we're getting at here, is how do you use all that imagery and how do you actually turn it into actionable insight? So there's a ton of imagery out there. It's all over the place. Struction Site, OxBlue site cameras, Procore, Autodesk, Oracle. There's so much photo documentation being taken, and whether it, as Matt said, sits in a folder someplace, or you could also argue, gets stuck somewhere in an album. In a construction management system, there's a lot of value that's actually in there that's not being tapped into. So I think a key point here is that why shouldn't you use powerful AI in an automated way to try and get as much data as you can out of the imagery you're already collecting? It's happening on your jobs, and you can actually get more value out of it. So what kind of things can we see? Well, we've named our artificial intelligence. So Amazon has Alexa, IBM has Watson, we have Vinny. So Vinny, it's actually a story there. You can go to our website and read the background, but he's a superintendent in the Mid-Atlantic area, Jersey. Vinny always remembered where the photos were, where they were in the folder structure. So we've automated Vinny, and we move beyond finding specific photos to actually looking for indicators of risk. So things like you see on the left, and we're going to go in a second and actually show you examples from Barton Malow and Hawaiian Dredging. These are some generic examples: housekeeping, ladder usage, workers in PPE. A lot of people know us for that, but that's really just one piece of what we do. Like, here's a worker missing gloves. Phase of construction. So are you in excavation? Are you towards the end of the job and doing an FF&E, fit out? So we can tell all that stuff. Vinny can tell all that stuff because he's been trained on now millions and millions of construction photos coming from all different kinds of systems. So the question is, what do you do with that data? It's not just finding photos. Actually, I think a key point here, a really important point, is it's about creating metrics. We're going to finish off here, and Ted from Barton Malow is going to share with us actually some metrics from Barton Malow generated from Vinny on some of their projects. It's really, really cool. This is an example from a webinar that we did recently with another customer where they've got now over 150 projects that are being analyzed by Vinny and then aggregated into a score. So the score, we could spend a ton of time on this, but I won't, because we need to move this along. But basically, you can take all that data, think of it as observations made by an AI, as opposed to observations made by a person. The AI is not sleeping. It's looking at all your photos, and it's looking for stuff like how much work at height's going on, how many ladders are being used, how much housekeeping do I see, and yeah, sure, PPE compliance. But the goal here, real goal, is to focus on risk and to focus on those projects that may be entering riskier phases or may have riskier situations going on. The goal of Vinny is not to nail somebody. It's not to write somebody up for not wearing gloves. It's to create risk data that you can use to focus attention, not to nail any one individual. And I think that's a really, really key point. It's about the data and about focusing on where your risk is. So with that as my last slide here, let's bring in Chris Bays here from Hawaiian Dredging. And he's going to take us through Hawaiian Dredging, a little bit of the background of the company, so you know who they are, and then really get into the specifics of how Struction Site is used, how SmartVid is used, and we'll get into actually some real live results. Chris, welcome on.
So I wanted to get started with just a little bit about our company. Despite our name, we do a lot more than just dredging projects, and we actually haven't done a dredging project in quite a while. This is a picture of our headquarters in downtown Honolulu, and we are the biggest general contractor in the state of Hawaii. We have 5 operating divisions. If you want to jump to the next slide. So we have a building division, we have a commercial division, heavy division, roads, bridges, we have waterfront and foundation, and we have a power and industrial division. So our business model is that we really do any type of large construction work in the state of Hawaii. We started doing work in Guam recently, but we're limited to this geographical area. We've been established here for a long time. The name of the company is Hawaiian Dredging because we got started by dredging Pearl Harbor over 100 years ago. So that's just a little bit of background of what Hawaiian Dredging is.
Great. Yeah, we keep getting asked how much dredging is going on in Hawaii, and also can we go visit Hawaiian Dredging? That's the other question we get asked a lot. So I think we're going to just talk to those points about SmartVid in action here as this video plays, right?
So this is, in the background, this is a video of the actual structure site interface, all web-based. So there's no software to install. It's purely running on a web interface. We've been using structure site for a little over 2 years now, and we recently used our first project where we combine both structure site and SmartVid.io. It's a hotel renovation job on the Big Island of Hawaii. And this was a job that was actually inherited from another general contractor. So someone else had started demo work, and we came in and kind of took over the job. And the first concern was that we needed good and fast documentation of where that project was at that point in time when the other contractor kind of stopped the job, and when we get on board, where is everything at? So we've done terrestrial laser scanning for a long time, and we did that. And terrestrial laser scanning is great, but the data is very heavy and it's generally hard to share. So I think, especially with structure site, we were able to go in and capture the entire building, every room. We're able to have everything live on the web, so it's easy to share, easy to look at. There is a timeline feature, so you can see how that job changes over time. So you'll see at the top there's a time-lapse view, and it's kind of very similar to Google Street View, where you go to a point, and then if you want to toggle to different dates that were taken from that point, that's easy to do. So this is a split view of, you can see that on the right-hand side, it was before the drywall was closed. You can still see all the pipes, everything exposed. And then on the left side, we've got drywall in. And we would love to laser scan everything all the time, but it's just not feasible. Structure site is a lot faster. We can get up there a lot more regularly. We're usually doing it, I think, twice a week. This data is valuable for many things. One of the things that our job site team is particularly excited about is warranty work. In the end, if you have a leak or something, if you have anything going wrong, obviously you can only get so much information looking at what it looks like now. You really need to go back in time and say, okay, well, where could this problem be originating from? And it's really kind of changed. It was mentioned earlier that usually you've got folders of hundreds of job site photos that are somewhat disorganized. And this changes the workflow to go to location first and then time, rather than date and then location. And that's a huge shift because it makes things way easier. You have a problem in a particular location, you know where that photo is. You go in, you click on that button, and then it's just a matter of scrubbing through the timeline view to find out when was it before that wall was closed, so you can see what was in place at that particular location. And with SmartVid.io, you really get kind of this synergy that's created by the two products. If you're capturing instruction site and you set up this integration, all the data is automatically feeding into the SmartVid.io side. There's no manual work for that at all. So we're getting hundreds of photos per week that we would be taking for instruction site anyway. And it's kind of, we get the automatic benefit of having those photos analyzed in SmartVid.io, and we get a lot of additional insight and information from them. You want to jump to the next slide for me?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, so this is kind of a recap of some of this. With the integration, we started this safety monitoring at the beginning of this hotel renovation job, and there is also a mobile app. So if you don't have the 360 camera on you, you can take out your smartphone and snap pictures of things, and those feed directly into smartvid.io and or Struction Site as well. We took over 600 photos in the last month, and so with the 360 camera, we have someone who is doing this regularly, and I think that's really how you maximize the value of software like this. If you have it set up and people are indiscriminately taking photos and throwing them in there every now and then, it's you can get some value. But if you really have kind of a structure set up where you're capturing regularly and getting content online regularly, then you can get a lot more value from this. So on this one job site, we've taken a few thousand images now, and it's actually someone is going out with a 360 camera once or twice a week, and it's to capture the entire. This is a big, several 100,000 square foot hotel, and to capture the entire property, it's taking about half a day with the 360 camera. Capturing about 200 images in about 4 hours. So that averages out to a photo roughly every minute or so if you're doing it with a 360 camera. Can you jump to the next slide, please?
Yep.
So the integration, we used Ignite. There's several options. If you already have Box or Google Drive or something set up, there's several ways to do it. But basically, we take photos using the Struction Site app, and those photos, Ignite actually goes in and actually grabs all those photos automatically. And then smartvid.io is able to jump into Ignite and pull the photos. So once this is kind of really a set it and forget it kind of thing. I actually set up this integration. It took less than 5 minutes to start with, and then I haven't had to look at it since I set it up. So it's really kind of seamless. All of your data from Struction Site is automatically getting piped into smartvid.io, which is really nice. Not having to juggle around multiple platforms.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's kind of interesting now, Chris, that there is, with APIs and the way programs can interface with each other, that data can flow like this. And I'm glad you haven't had to look at it since you set it up. That's great to hear. So in terms of what Vinny is seeing in the images, we have some examples here actually from the project, from the hotel project, and then I'm going to jump into the software too and just show folks how the AI finds stuff in a 360 sphere and zooms around. So what is Vinny looking for? Well, what Hawaiian Dredging is doing is they're using some of our standard safety monitoring type observations where we are looking for signals of risk. Now there's a whole bunch of different stuff that Vinny looks for. You may hear me call them tags. It's a way that when Vinny sees something, he applies a tag with also a box around the specific thing. That allows Vinny to not just find things, for example, like this folding ladder in the image, but also count them. So we're able to get things like counts of folding ladders, counts of different kinds of infrastructure for working at height, counts of workers, and then counts a whole bunch of different things, too numerous to go through here. But by getting counts and localizing, you can then do the data analytics that I was showing before and generate some of the statistics. And what they equate to is these are all signals of risk. Now, there's no one doing anything wrong here. I want to make that really clear. There's no one's doing anything wrong on the ladder. It's just that working at height is a risk factor. And if you have a bunch of different projects, or even your one big project, you may want to know how risk is changing over time. So this is an example of a 360 image. Vinny's found some folding ladders, made some observations about workers with gloves or no gloves, sees a scissor lift in the background. Because this tag is highlighted, you're seeing it in the image there. Another example here's a folding ladder that was seen. Sometimes it could reveal an opportunity for an improvement. Folding ladders are not supposed to be leaned up against the wall, But, again, this isn't about trying to go and nail this guy. It's just an example of ladders being used, and, might be an interesting point in a toolbox talk coming up. Here's another spherical shot from Struction Site, where you're able to see here. Here's a nice example of, because it's about finding both opportunities for positive encouragement too. Here's well done vertical capped rebar. And then this is actually a really interesting image because there's a bunch of people in it. So let me I'm going to go into the software now live, which is always exciting in a live webinar. Let me just make sure that you guys can see it. And now, as you can see on the left, I am clicking around, and Vinny is, we're in the SmartVid.io interface here, but the image came from Struction Site. Vinny has gone through and found all the people in this image, and now I'm just zooming around and looking at them, and also identifying if, for example, a particular worker was seen not wearing gloves, which this guy was not wearing gloves. So again, you're not out to nail this guy, but it's a great example of how Vinny is looking at all of the various sources of risk in the image and leveraging the data you already have.
So I'll expand on that kind of glove comment a little bit. We actually, at Dredging, we implemented a glove policy on our job sites about a couple of years ago now. And as mentioned, it's not about kind of busting and saying, hey, you didn't comply with our rules, and we're tracking that. It's more kind of keeping an eye on the culture. How seriously are our employees taking this glove policy that we implemented on a job site by job site basis? Understanding the culture of a job site, it really the only way to do that in the past is to be on that job site and actually walk the site every day and see, okay, well, what's going on, who's doing what. And now with this platform, we have a way to keep an eye on that kind of from the executive level or off job site level. These photos are kind of telling a story. How is the job site progressing? Who's doing what? And those KPIs, just keeping an eye on how different safety aspects are shifting on the job site, how they're improving, how they're not improving. That's the real value for us in SmartVid.io.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. Great. I'm going to go, let's go back into the slides here. And we will keep this rolling along. Chris will be a part of the Q&A and discussion we have at the end. So we'll all come back together. But before we get there, let's welcome Ted on to talk about Barton Malow and similarly walk through the experiences of using both products together. And with Ted, we'll also get into some of the analytics and reports that are being generated. Ted, welcome on.
Great, thank you, Josh. So just a quick intro to Barton Malow. So Barton Malow has been in operation for 95 years. We have 14 offices across 10 different states, and we operate in a large number of markets, spanning from education to industrial, energy, health, sports, as well as we self-perform a large number of skilled trades. So that includes concrete, civil, structural steel, boilermaker work, refractory, rigging, millwright, interiors, as well. So very diverse group, and very interested in sharing our story with how we implemented Struction Site and SmartVid. So if you want to roll to the next slide.
There we go.
Great. So we have kind of an interesting story, I think, where we started several years ago with 360 cameras back when bubble cam and GoPro rigs were around and stuff like that, and stitching together 6 different GoPro rigs to be able to create 360 video for walkthroughs and those sorts of things. And it was really once Struction Site came on the market where they provided a very simple, effective way of capturing 360 photos. As Matt had mentioned earlier, dropping those photos directly onto your drawings. So now you have the benefit of knowing the context of where and when you took those photos, versus just kind of being buried in a folder structure. So we've started to deploy that across our organization. And again, the biggest benefit there is just through the simplicity. All I need to be able to document progress photos or job site photos is, my iPhone or mobile device and, a 360 camera. So like Ricoh Theta or Instacam, those sorts of things. And so our initial focus, we thought was going to be on progress photos. One of the fast, rapid ways where we kind of deployed it was across our K-12 and education market to be able to very fast and efficiently document schools as well as do pre-con walkthroughs. And we've kind of fed that back into progress photos where we've been able to, spread that across the company, be able to use timeline and other features of the tool to be able to, again, very quickly and accurately take progress photos and develop other sorts of reports. If you want to go to next, perfect.
Yep.
All right, so on to so our journey with SmartVid. So we started in January, and we've been deploying SmartVid across 6 projects that we've been targeting as kind of our initial pilot projects. And so the real goal, here is to be able to leverage the power of all those photos that we're taking, and have those be piped from Box, which we're using, to SmartVid to be able to have Vinny analyze. And the benefit in this sense is we get trend data to better understand our safety behavior and culture, and focus really where we need to focus on for various either training or risk factors. The other big benefit for us is the reporting. So one of the reports that is easily generated from SmartVid is hyperlinked back to SmartVid. It develops insights into how many photos you captured for that job, general trend analysis on that, some compliance information for PPE, as well as other types of risks. And like I said, it's hyperlinked directly back to SmartVid. So when you click on it, it takes you to those photos to be able to review very quickly and easily. All right, and so move forward one more slide. So yeah, this is simple graphic of our integration. So we walk our jobs with construction site, take our photos, have those documented, based back on our drawings and plans for that project. That's piped to Box, which is any sorts of photos that are generated outside, are also piped to Box and then sent to SmartVid for Vinny to analyze. And if you want to flip to the next slide, we'll get into some examples now.
That's great. Thanks, Ted. Yeah, I think the integration data flow, I'll just go back to that for a second. I mean, the integration data flow couldn't be much simpler, right? It's like 2 arrows and just these 3 products talking to each other. And it all, whether you're using Box or Ignite or Procore or Autodesk or any one of the systems, we can all, Instruction Site and SmartVid can play with those and get the data flowing automatically. So just like we did with Hawaiian Dredging, and Chris, here's some examples coming out of Barton Malow jobs, just to show Vinny in action. So this is an example of a crew. There's one worker seen not wearing gloves there. Again, the point here is not to go nail that guy, but to use it as a part of the analytics, which we're going to get into in a second. Here's some other, really neat examples here. So here's a site, a photo that was taken looking down at the pit, and it's kind of hard to see, but there actually are 10 workers. There's 10 guys here working here in and around the rebar caging, and we find all of them. And then those can be used as a way of analyzing, again, safety and safety percentages around things like PPE, and also just getting a feel for how many workers are actually there on site on that particular day in that particular area of the job. Last but not least, here's it's always good. We're finding ladders. Sometimes when you see ladders, you see, it can be an indicator of risky activity. So, this ladder is, again, not positioned. Maybe its position could be improved a little bit. We know how many ladders are out there. We know also maybe there's always some good examples to pull out for things that you can work on or talk about. But the photos actually wind up being the data. It's not the point here is not for a person to have to go through and review every photo. That actually, it's the opposite of the point. The point is to create these KPIs or key performance indicators that focus on where the risk is. So, Ted, I'm wondering if I could have you talk through a little bit what you've found with the scores and just the process of thinking about how to get to what Vinny sees and then bubbling that up into a risk score for your projects.
Yeah. Yep. So one of the outputs of SmartVid is being able to understand this type of data, which is helping us understand compared to baseline risk factors, where we should be focusing our attention. You can see their total photos per month. Those are just general information to make sure that we're getting out there and helping document the job, say take photos, and then we're ingesting photos at a healthy rate to be able to make sure that we're feeding Vinny. Working from height ladders and housekeeping are all good baseline observations that we want to understand and make sure that we're tracking. And then you can see over on the right hand side, compliance rate is another helpful indicator, similar to risk score, is just where should we be focusing our attention, where and when, and then what sorts of things can we be thinking about to obviously improve those numbers with continuous improvement in mind.
Yeah, and along those lines, one of the things that we've started doing is benchmarking projects to an average across the company. So here's the Barton Malow average, for example, and then doing a completely anonymous sample of peers, so peer companies in the SmartVid customer base, to allow companies to look at where they are in terms of these metrics and drive towards continual improvement within themselves and see where they are against their peers. Now, this is all goodness. It's all about setting targets and trying to continually improve against them and knowing where you stand, as a firm. So the next piece, Ted, is doing some historical analysis, looking at incidents too, and where incidents have happened, and that's one of the neat things about photos and photo analytics, is that a lot of old projects have photos as well as project data. And that's led to some pretty exciting, you think of it as outcomes or observations, where, and I'll introduce this concept, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Where basically what we've done here is we've charted that score. So if you look at the score here, the lifetime risk score, like here, 32, 41, et cetera, that score, the higher it is, so the more it goes into green, the safer, the less risky Vinny thinks the job is. The lower the score, the more risky Vinny thinks the job is. So that's why you can see in orange here, this is the risk score. And then these bars are, you can think rough magnitude incident counts. And we're hiding all the actual data so that it's anonymized here, but it's the rough incident counts. So the thing that's been interesting to see is if you go back, and this is over 13 months of a particular project, the scores, as the score goes up and Vinny thinks the job is safer, what we're observing here is that there's actually fewer incidents. But as the score is trending down on the job where the score is trending down, we're actually seeing incidents occur, which is really interesting relationship between the two, and one that we're continuing to explore. What have you thought about this stuff, Ted?
So yeah, so interesting, great concept where you could apply it to anything, where if you could better understand where your risk lies, and trend that over the life cycle of your project, you'd better be able to analyze that risk and mitigate that risk, because that's what this historical project data is directly pointing at, is that on future projects now, we can start to chart that risk out, and better manage that risk so that we can understand, are we heading higher into the darker green areas, or are we starting to trend down into the red, and then what we can start to better evaluate what corrective actions can we start to deploy to get us back up into the green. And this is one of the big things here is this is an additional, tool to the tool chest. So this is helping provide, insights into areas that we otherwise, would not have just because of Vinny. So
that's great. That's great. Yeah, and this stuff we're working hard at also from the standpoint of predicting. So based on this score as well as a bunch of other factors, project factors, everything from the weather to project type to phase to a whole bunch of things, could we actually predict if incidents are going to happen? And that's what we're working together on in the Predictive Analytics Council as well. This is just showing how the two relate. It's really interesting to see. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Daly to help with the questions for the panel and help manage. He's been looking at the questions coming in live through chat, as we'll pick off a few. I just took a quick look, and it looks like there's a ton of questions out there, which is awesome. So we'll make sure we have everybody out there. We got Chris and Ted and Matt. And now that we've gone through Construction Site and SmartVid and the experiences of Hawaiian Dredging and Barton Malow, let's bring this all together and bring it to a close with some questions and Q&A and dialogue. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Just let me know if we sort of start running up on our time here. So there's some questions that are similar in nature, so I'm going to try to batch them together and then sort of just pitch them over to Chris and Ted here. And some of the questions are very related to, Michael Dolberg has asked, can the PPE compliance be broken into category, for example, gloves, ladders, etc.? Edwin Cardoza asked, is it possible to evaluate, excuse me, the use of personal protective equipment? And then even Matt Johns asked the question, other than gloves, what other PPE items can Vinny pick up? Hard hat, safety glasses. So I think there's a lot of questions about what exactly can be detected and what categories that can be broken down into. Maybe that's you, Josh, to tackle that.
I'd be happy to let Chris and Ted take a crack at it, and then I'll jump in if needed.
Yeah, I can jump in. So Vinny actually will break it up into each component of the PPE. It'll look for a high vis vest. It'll look for gloves. It'll look for safety glasses. It'll look for a hard hat. I think it'll even make sure that boots are present. So it can basically, one of our charts that SmartVids kicks out automatically is it looks at PPE compliance on an individual piece of PPE level, and it'll say that this is the percentage of times that we found photos without gloves or without high vis or without hard hats. So it's completely modular, and it's also kind of, if you have a question, the team at SmartVid can kind of help you answer it. So it does some basic metrics and charts it. And if you wanted to get into more specific things, like what time of the job site was our PP compliance getting better? It's again, the more that you capture data, the more intelligence that SmartVid is able to mine.
Did we lose Chris?
Nope, we're here,
Nope,
Matt.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Ted, is there anything you wanted to add to that before I jump to the next question?
No. Great explanation. So
perfect. Cool. So the next question, I think, is actually, there's a few folks that have asked another sort of like very similar question. Kyle Glines is asking, can you explain how to optimize your team's usage / capture in perpetuity? I've not been able to get job site teams to stay consistent. And then Joe Pasilico also asked, how often do you take 360 photos? What's the time interval? Where does the data come from? Which I think it leads into the sort of bigger question of how do you implement these tools and technologies in a way that ensures you actually get the data you need to process and analyze in the first place. So do you guys each want to try to tackle how you guys think about implementation and capture frequency?
Sure. For us, it's usually at least once a week. We try to go for twice a week, and for consistency, I think to make this really work, you have to make it a part of someone's job. As I mentioned earlier, it can't be something that people just casually snap photos when they have time to, because realistically on job sites everyone's busy and no one has time to set aside and take on something like this. So I think part of how we got it in someone's job description is you have to have buy-in from the job site management. So the project manager saw the value. They assigned an intern and said, okay, this is on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Your job is to walk the site and take photos where applicable. And we're not also kind of taking photos where things aren't changing. So that intern also has kind of a pulse on the job site and says, okay, well, I know that no work has been done in the guest room units, so there's no point in taking photos of areas that haven't changed. But where is the job site activity occurring, and that's where we're taking the photos more regularly.
Yeah, and Matt, just to jump in on that as well, just in some of the conversations with Chris, like in addition to regular cadence and identifying a lead person, it for us it's been about building it into our current process workflows and getting value on the back end. So dovetail site back into as many different purposes as possible, because it's helping optimize our photos on the job site. So it's much more easier to review progress on the job site or current state of the job site, in owners meetings or meetings with your architect or engineer, building that into quality reports or production tracking. It's much more user friendly and accessible, because it's all web based and it's shareable through URLs, as well as obviously with SmartVid with reporting, it's much more easier for us to discuss that by sharing the reports or sharing photos or URLs as well. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Appreciate that answer from both of you guys. I know that's a question a lot of people have now and will continue to have, until the day that there's robots and drones flying around the job site doing this for us. We're going to have to figure out how to make sure that it becomes a part of the process and sort of integrated into your normal workflows. So it's great to hear that you guys have really started to cross that chasm at your companies. Another question came in here related to, can SmartVid use, this is from Michael Dolberg, can SmartVid use an existing photo archive of a project currently in progress, or does it need to be involved from the start? And I'm guessing both of you guys had situations like this where you're analyzing. In fact, I think you guys even addressed here, Josh, where you're looking at like historical data. So maybe could you guys talk about anything you guys have done processing any of your historical data?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. I'll take a stab at it, Chris, and then you can on it. So, with the integrate, so we use the integration, and because those previous photos would have been stored in Box, it's as simple as just turning the integration on. And because there's a wealth of metadata within those photos, it will SmartVid will retroactively go back through and retroactively process all of those photos, which is very helpful, because if you're mid project and you want to deploy this, it's very simple and easy to just kind of hit and go. So.
Yeah, I'll say that I think for maximum value, it's best on a live job site, because when you get these KPIs, the idea is that you're able to take this information and adjust the way that you're doing things based on it. But so far as being able to drop old images in, it works just as well, because when those images were taken, it timestamped them. So you still get the aspect of a timeline. There's no, from the photo analyzing side, whether they were taken immediately or taken in the past, it's just as valuable either way.
Matt, I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then we'll be getting close to the hour.
Perfect. Appreciate the moderation. So I think I'm looking at the last question here, which maybe people are asking, maybe they're not. You mentioned earlier, we talked a little bit earlier about how this sort of information can affect culture, and which I think is maybe something that I'll tie this question into. So taking pictures, the question is coming from Mukti Gaimeyer, and I really apologize if I'm not pronouncing that properly. But the question is, taking pictures does not violate, or does taking pictures violate workers' privacy? So I think maybe if you guys are willing to tackle like that question, as well as how this sort of information can positively affect culture at the company and not just be used as a hammer.
I think from our side, we're very aware of that. It's I know that everyone is guilty of taking off their gloves to use their smartphone or any number of things, and I think it's in the way that the information is kind of aggregated and presented at the job site, and I think that as long as everyone understands that they're not at risk for being seen in a photo, and not complying with something, they're not scared of the 360 camera every time it comes around. And it's more of kind of a positive reminder. I think when people on the job site see the camera, they associate that with smartvid.io and the analysis that we're doing now. And it's not like oh man, superintendent's here, I better put on my gloves. It's kind of like, oh yeah, this they're using it to track metrics, and I should have my gloves on. So I think the tool is kind of it does its job very well, but that human aspect of how the information from the tool is presented to the people on the job site is really where you can control how the culture shift happens.
Yeah, and I would just add to that it's helping reinforce safety, a part of our culture, and it's providing insights that you're not going to be able to gain otherwise. But one of the other things is it's very easy to like focus on the negative, but we're working on integrating obviously the positive aspects. So what are the positive observations? What are the positive aspects of using this? And just kind of flipping the script a little bit, because again, it's very easy to look at one photo but lose that in context of hey, we actually at 99% across all photos on this project, so we're doing very, very well. Obviously we still want to continue to improve and get better, but it's very important from our perspective that we reinforce it back to the big picture and put it in perspective of what progress we've made and where we currently at on the project.
I think that's a great way to bring us to a close here. The data here is really only useful if it drives change, drives focusing on positive improvements, whether it's through safety culture or other aspects of job site risk. So I think that's also back to an earlier question that came up to everybody, and that Matt, you made the point on what's the drive? What's the reason behind taking progress photos, behind using Struction Site, behind gathering data? Well, up until these kinds of technologies like we're talking about today, up until they existed, I don't know if there was as much of a need, other than just like we were saying, the photos, the visual data gathered dust. Maybe you paid somebody else to do it, and then it was there as like a rainy day kind of plan, an insurance plan, if you could even find the image you needed when the claim came up. But now there's a much stronger reason, and I think we're all on this, on this panel, we're all a part of this. There's a much stronger reason to gather more data. You can actually measure and manage how you're doing in ways that weren't possible before. and I think I'm really excited for where this is going to take our industry as a whole, because now you can actually do something with the data. You can move it around, as we've seen through the integrations. You can analyze it. You can get a lot of value out of it. And I think back to the whole point about building a process, building a standard operating procedure and SOP around this. I think it's a huge reason to do so, and for companies to look hard at how they think about gathering data from jobs today. So I want to thank everybody. Thanks to Struction Site, and I know on behalf of Matt, we want to thank both you guys, Ted and Chris, and your firms for being great customers and being with us on this journey to apply new technology, try and unlock insights from the data that you're gathering, and use it to ultimately to improve the performance of your projects and send more people home safe in the process. So thanks you guys for participating in this discussion, and thanks for your work together as customers. Really appreciate it.